Just one more series remains. It's a high-profile mainstream fixture here to finish it off. It's going to be a best of 5, and it will be Oliveira, the world champion, going up against another world champion in Reynor here from the past. Joining me to break this down here, we have Fear Dragon as well as Rotterdam to talk about this one. Roddy, I could only imagine you're quite hyped regarding this match, because when we have these kind of big fixtures from the past rear their heads once again, so it's exciting to see how it's going to go down.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we said it earlier, the journey for Oliveira didn't quite start with Reynor in the playoffs. Obviously, it was Gabe in the round of 12, but it was that quarterfinals against Reynor where people were like, oh my goodness, what is happening? The man was down 0-2, but we all remember that super close game on Dragon Skills with the one little Baneling that blew up the final few Marines. They were like, oh, he was so close to winning a map, but that was just the start of his magic. Like in game 3, 4, and 5, the man was phenomenal, and Reynor at that point was flawless in IEM Katowice, because a lot of people look at Reynor and are like, oh, he wasn't that great. He went 5-0 in his group stage, right? Reynor looked phenomenal to that point. It's just Oliveira that stopped him. So to now see the rematch, give or take a couple months later, 2-3 months, plenty of reasons to be very, very excited for this one.
No, definitely. I'm sure this also sticks in your mind quite a lot, Fear Dragon. I think it was you and ZG that were casting it whilst it was going on in Katowice, and if I do say so myself, some of the best casting I think we've ever heard from you and ZG was from this match. It was unbelievable. So when it comes to Oliveira and Reynor, what are you thinking, mate?
Oh, I am super amped about this. I totally agree. I think just like replaying ZG's play-by-play during some of those things just sends chills down my spine. But also, it was literally just the play from those players was absolutely top-notch. But here's the thing that I need to bring up, James. Reynor is not the kind of player that thinks lightly of like the rematch. Reynor is absolutely the kind of player who has a little bit of pride on the line for this and kind of says, all right, but now I show you who's really in charge. I'm not going to allow you to repeat Katowice, and I'm going to show you guys that I'm in fact better. So I think I actually have a hard time imagining, and I know, Roddy, you're even closer with Reynor. You can back me up or tell me I'm wrong on this, but I feel like Reynor's going to come into this saying, yeah, I got a little bit of a chip on my shoulder and something to prove on this one.
Yeah, but not just because it is Oliveira, and not just because Oliveira is the world champ and he's the one that got the best of Reynor in Katowice. Reynor is beating himself up for what happened on Friday. That was just not the level of play that he wants to show. So I think he's honestly more focusing on setting the record straight, because whatever happened on Friday is, for Reynor, his own standards, unacceptable. Like all of us, we look at it as like, yeah, Reynor is allowed to have a bad day, just like Maru is allowed to have a bad day. But Reynor is an eager young man. He was obviously not happy with the way that best of 3 went, and he wants to set the record straight today. And if it happens to be against Oliveira, I think that's just the cherry on top.
Yeah, I guess we find ourselves again in that similar miasma of, yes, it's the world champion Oliveira, but you know, when you look at the result against Hero Marine just before, a different matchup, of course, but still maybe a few question marks here and there as to whether Oliveira is a world championship caliber or a normal Oliveira / time caliber, Roddy. So what do you think regarding that? Do you think we're probably giving Reynor the edge here?
Yes, normally I'd give Reynor the edge, despite the fact that Oliveira got the best of him in Katowice. It's also because it is online. You have to mention it. It's obviously not fun, but this part is being played online, and playing from China can be very difficult cross-server.
True.
That has not stopped Oliveira from a couple of great performances in the past, online as well, cross-server. It's not like this is unknown territory for him, but there is a good chance that Oliveira is able to shine a little bit brighter offline than he is online, and especially the performance yesterday gives us some reason to believe that.
Yeah, got to agree. All right, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Time for the final series of the day. Hopefully, it's main event worthy here, as we have Reynor, a world champion, a previous world champion, going up against the current world champion, Oliveira.
So excited to be casting this best of 5 Oliveira versus Reynor with my friend Katz. Katz, are you super excited? Because I am.
I am extremely excited. I mean, last time around, it was Oliveira pulling a Reynor on Reynor, and I agree with them. Some of the best casting I've ever seen in StarCraft, really, for that series. So I hope we get a series that gets us as hyped as that was, because these two certainly have the capacity for it.
Yeah, I think that this can still be a very good best of 5, but absolutely have to take into account that it is going to be China to Europe. Netherlands, I think. And that, yeah, Oliveira hasn't really looked to be in the super best form for this tournament. And there was something really very special about that Katowice. But he has been a contender to many of the top tier players before online. Let's see if he can do it again. In the bottom right on Babylon, he is Team DKZ's Oliveira.
And his opponent with a little bit of trouble yesterday, but showing incredible form today. It is for Basilisk, Reynor.
It's simply amazing to think back to that Katowice tournament. Everything just was so, frankly, magical about it, and the games delivered in such a way that it was so easy to have some of the best casting from all of the commentators. But yeah, I certainly enjoyed being privileged to cast the start of Oliveira's run, because I also cast his match versus him in the round of 12, and then versus Reynor, and it. I mean, I could only hope that it happens again. But the other thing that was unfortunate, besides Reynor just not getting as far as we would expect, because, you know, tons of people are Reynor fans, is that it also stopped Reynor from getting that 4th time in a row being at a global championship finals. I mean, the guy's just, he got BlizzCon, then he actually won the online IM Katowice, then he was in the next Katowice, and then he was, again, supposed to be at the next one, and Oliveira, of all people, were to stop him. So if Reynor had a little bit of chip on his shoulder, I wouldn't be surprised, but Raynor's a pretty chill kid, and I think right now he's just thinking, let me just go ahead and win this. I don't like being in the lower bracket.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's not chilling once he enters the game, that's for sure. He is going to be looking for destruction here, I think. I really hope for a belter, as Kalaris called it. I googled that word. It's actually seen reduced use, and it's at the lowest usage ever at 0.00002%. So shout out to Kalaris for finding that word.
Yeah, I've never really heard it in that context, but it is British slang. I always heard it in the context of a loud singer. And then I guess also the Expanse. They were the ones that lived on the belt, right? So.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So I don't know. I love learning new slang to use, and Kolaris just makes it so easy to use it and incorporate it into our cast because he starts it. But if I could, I'd also be bringing in some other slang, you know, like Australian slang or something. It'd be fun.
Oh, that would be fantastic indeed. And yeah, I mean, nothing eventful here in this early game. Reynor is going to be comfortable dropping that creep tumor up the ramp. Oliveira it's not going to be easy to contest on this map. And of course, both players kind of vetoing the expected maps, whereas earlier in the Korean TVC, we saw Altitude and Neo Humanity both go through the vetoes. This time around, both of those maps are gone. So pretty standard stuff here to begin.
Well, not so standard on the build order. Oliveira not going into Reactored Hellions, going 2-base kind of 1-1-1, sure. But then adding on Marines. Also, the wall off is very odd, I must say. Reynor not only would have a lot of surface area, which isn't too big of a problem in the game TVZ, but just he would scout everything. There really isn't I think he'd even scout the starport. So the reactors, what they're added onto, if Reynor just got up in there, which is very possible.
Yeah, it's a very interesting wall-off indeed. I mean, in a certain way, it's kind of cool that both of the units from the buildings are going to be able to spawn on the other side, and you are double protected by 2 ramps on this particular map as the Overlord Scout gets denied.
Okay, so Oliveira is setting it up to look like it might even be like a 2-1-1. Can we get Raynor's vision again? Because he just showed a bunch of Marines, but he's adding on Marauders. Absolutely going to go into a Hellbat build. Yeah, exactly. So he's going to go into Marauder Hellbat after well, it's not going to look like a 2-1-1 with this Medivac popping out and doing some damage, but it looks like something that would not turn into Hellbat Marauder. Hellbat Marauder, certainly 99% of the time, is going to come out as its own build. Hellions first and Marauders being added on. This starts with Marines. Oh, that is an excellent scout. Seeing that one Marauder is actually enough to let Reynor know to expect the Hellbat attack.
Yeah, and instantly drops a Baneling Nest as a result. Obviously, Banelings are going to be the best possible answer against Hellbats. A Spine as well to counter the Hellbats. Obviously, that is what the Marauders are there for. But if you get rid of the Hellbats, Lynx and Queens have no issue whatsoever against Marauders. So Reynor with a great read here. And it's going to be difficult for Oliveira to make something happen now.
Yeah. That is very unfortunate, because I really think this could have thrown most Zergs off with the opening, the way it went down. Banelings are not prepared, but the Queens are all together, and that's always a solid start to defending a Hellbat attack.
Yeah, I mean, I love what Oliveira does in the sense that he goes as fast as possible, not really waiting for that many Marauders, trying to not leave too much time for Reynor to react upon being scouted. But is it going to be enough? A lot of Queens here, the Spine also just kicking in at this point in time. The Lynx just want to be safeguarded until the Hellbats are pushed away, and Reynor does a fantastic job on defense.
Yeah, as expected after he scouted it, but honestly, even if he got just any kind of inkling of it, if the Queens are together, that really is the start of, and perhaps even as much as 50 to 60% of the defense, honestly, especially against the Marauder build, which is supposed to catch 1 or 2 Queens because they slow them down, obviously. So Reynor dealing with that so flawlessly. Oliveira is honestly already in trouble. I don't want to call it game over, but that was one of the better holds we'd ever see from a Hellbat attack, and no complications afterwards. It's just gonna be difficult for Oliveira.
Very difficult indeed, and I do like the strategic choice from Oliveira. You mentioned him playing from China into Europe, but also for this particular map, the area that he chose to drop his Hellions to and the Marauders and whatnot, very nice, because you are on a high ground, so it's very likely to not get spotted until you go down this ramp. Leaves Reynor very little time to react had he not scouted, and it was so very close. Any other unit, any extra unit on that low ground on the first ramp would have done it. The supply depot a little bit earlier would have done it, and then we see a completely different game. But as a result, like you said, I mean, the Queens are together. The Baneling Nest, even though it wasn't ready, it forces the attack to come earlier. The Spine was ready, and now Oliveira in a world of trouble.
What's funny, though, I was thinking back to their Katowice best of 5. This was the map where Reynor was basically already tilted and already playing subpar. We learned later from Oliveira's interviews afterwards just how much, the details he was picking up on. But not about the map, just about the first game of the series, which... Katowice was, I think, like altitude or something. That was a double starport attempt. It totally failed. It was scouted. It was terrible. Oliveira just shrugged it off and said, well, I tried something kind of wacky, and it is what it is. And still ended up, of course, winning that series. So this is kind of similar to that. But obviously, it's still not ideal to start a series off like this and then be forced to play into what is probably going to be an attempted very late game TVZ.
And yeah, and we have to see Reynor not get complacent as well if he does get an advantage in this game. We know him to be the comeback kid. When he is behind, I feel like he is at his best oftentimes. So there's still that, right? Like, there's still that playing against him, maybe getting nervous towards the tail end of that comeback from Oliveira, as Oliveira tries to gain some ground. But already the creep spread fantastic. 5 bases on the side of the Zerg, and Oliveira just has to hold on for dear life here. So tanks are going to be his choice, and he's going to try to kind of crawl his way out on the map and make some space for him to slowly kind of try to bring this game back on defense.
Yeah, exactly. There's not much that he can do, really. He's not going to hit any particular timing or abusive tank positioning on the offense anyways. There's some nice defensive slots on Babylon as this drop does get basically cleared up. You send out 1 or 2 drops while you just defend at home just to make sure it doesn't get too overwhelming. But the fact is that it already is overwhelming. The supplies might not look that bad, guys, but it is a lot because Reynor is fitting everything in at once besides having to build armies. So he went up to 98 drones on 5 bases, macro hatch down, all the technology. Hive's already going to be finished at about literally 9 minutes. And then he's going to explode with aggression, and that's going to be still very difficult for Oliveira to hold up against.
Yeah, already a macro hatch in the main of Reynor as he takes his 6th base. This was extremely fast to the 98 workers, extremely fast to saturate the 5 bases. So it's going to be endless waves of aggression from Reynor for this time on. And I love that income advantage tab as well. You can see it growing. So even though the supply, like you said, wasn't too different, it's going to get worse and worse. And I don't know that Oliveira wants to be moving out right now.
If he's thinking he's going to hit before Reynor's investments pay off, I think he is incorrect. Because that's certainly something to think about. If he catches Reynor before he's actually maxed, because Reynor thinks, oh, he's going to play super passive. Maybe there's something to be said there. But with especially the creep mechanic, so far in advance when they're pushing out, it's not like you skipped 60 supplies with an army to get where you are. Reynor is pretty much ready to go if Oliveira pushes it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he has a 360 surround. If Oliveira goes another inch in the middle, Reynor's going to go. In fact, he's going to go right now, or at least it looked like on the minimap for a second. But presses S, and all of his units will stop.
Yeah, exactly. He's waiting for those 2-2, maybe. Or maybe he just figures it's not worth diving a little bit farther.
Yeah, I thought if Oliveira steps a little bit further, then he gets the 360. Where he stands, he gets like a little bit more than a 180. So I thought just wait a little bit longer, but then he started moving, and now he does with the 2-2, as you mentioned. This is going to be go time for Reynor, and I'm not going to mind it because he has the capability for remax. If he wins this fight, the game is as good as over, and it doesn't look too great for Oliveira, but Reynor doesn't need to trade too effectively here. This was great for him.
Yeah, you know, Oliveira has a sizable army left over, so he will be able to play out the rest of the game, or play the game a little bit longer as well. But Reynor can do this over and over and over again. The fact that that wasn't anywhere close to Reynor's side of the map really makes it acceptable. It's only if your hatcheries potentially under fire to a counterattack that you got to be careful as a Zerg player. Actually, currently some Liberators being quite a bother. Not a whole lot of anti-air. Finally, some Hydras getting out to clean that up.
Yes, indeed, as the lurker transition begins for Reynor here, who has taken an extra 2 bases now out on the map to make it a total of 8. That is more than his allotted number of bases that he should have, as now he comes crashing on through the middle of the map. No creep, no matter, says Reynor. He is going to continue to push on forward, and now will scout this CCs. He could go for them, honestly, trade units for them. Not usually the best choice, but this time around they're not nearly done, so even the Banelings would be good to detonate, and he is just completely swarming this game.
As much as Oliveira wants to show off his micro skills, despite, I'm sure, some lag issues, it's not enough. One individual Marine is not going to win against the horde of Zerg that is flooding across the map. Reynor had this down as soon as that Ling scouted the Marauder. That is literally what this game came down to.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was it. That was that one Zergling with almost no HP, and we thought, okay, this game is probably over. Reynor, instant Baneling Nest, instant perfect positioning, and now look at this. I mean, the creep spread after to follow. Like you said, Oliveira maybe hoping that Reynor didn't explode as hard as he did, but that is just kind of Reynor in a nutshell. You cannot do this unless you have accrued a fantastic advantage, which he did. He deflects the first attack so convincingly that he can just go to 98 workers, and at that point it's checkmate.
Yeah, and so much room to maneuver again. If Oliveira had that Maxer army closer to an important base, the third, or the natural, it still could have been scary, but it was nowhere close. So Reynor knew exactly what to do, and we are talking like this game is over because, guys, it really is. Oliveira, I don't know, hoping that Banelings all explode manually on nothing, I suppose.
Yeah, and the sad thing for Oliveira here is that you might feel like you got outplayed harder than you did, right? Because he doesn't know just how greedy Reynor was on the back of deflecting the first attack. So you might just feel like you got completely outclassed, but in reality, it was just that one decision from Reynor to continue to explode after holding the first attack and taking some risk at a point in time where it is very difficult for the Terran to make the decision to try and punish anything.
Yeah, very difficult game after that opening went the way that it did. But again, kind of finally close to their series in Katowice, where overall, very few differences in the term of how screwed are you after this is scouted. So 2-port battle cruiser sounds quite risky. Sounds like if you get scouted, it's pretty much dead. That was true. Kind of same for a Hellbat build nowadays, honestly, especially with the likes of Reynor, who also did not take any harassment prior to that, by the way. There wasn't even a little bit of Hellion harassment. It was just that medevac that ended up joining up with the rest of the crew. So it really was determined from the get-go.
Absolutely. And again, like, Oliveira did make some really cool moves or cool, he had a lot of cool ideas going into this map. You mentioned the ramp. It's very unorthodox, but again, looking back on it, it makes it so that your very important early timing hits a little bit earlier so that your units are kind of just spawning on the other side of the ramp. It makes it so that you have a double protection ramp and you're protected against the Overlord scout, where we saw Reynor fail to scout because the buildings are up at the front, right? So the Overlord doesn't get anything. It's just that one damn Ling that wins Reynor the game. And otherwise, cool strategy, cool map, cool concepts, cool positioning from Oliveira. But yeah.
even the Reaper, actually, this is something that some other Terran builds do, which is that they do get a Reaper, but then they basically don't do anything with it except defend. Gumiho's 2-port battlecruiser build actually does the same thing. It's literally only there to stop a Ling from getting in. So basically, big F to that Reaper. It failed in its job, and that is the reason that he was so far behind. And to be clear as well, I don't think it's even a case that if Reynor hadn't scouted it, it would have been a slam dunk victory for Oliveira. I don't think it goes that far back towards his favor if it goes unscouted, but obviously it would have set him up very well to follow up with momentum. Let's see what he has in store for game number 2. In the bottom left, down 1, it is Oliveira.
And on the top right-hand side, it is Reynor. And yeah, I completely agree with you, but at the same time, while it wouldn't be necessarily a win for Oliveira right away, he gets something done, right? Like, you rely on the surprise element of this attack, and while surprising your opponent doesn't net you the victory right away, at least you're not going up against a spine, which is just impossible, and you're definitely not going up against all the queens clumped up, like you said, because if you're a sensible Cirque player, you need to be injecting, you need to be in different positions to deny, like split to deny potential Hellion harass or Reapers jumping into the main, or anything coming from the air. So your queens can not afford to be clumped up unless you know that something's coming where they need to be. So he would have definitely bled out a few more units, taking a little bit more damage, and then the game develops differently where both players potentially have a chance at the very least.
Yep, 4 queens die, more Lings than you'd hope die, the creep spread doesn't really get going, the injects are missed, the 5th hatchery gets delayed because the follow-up drop is so much better, and then that attack through the middle of the map. You don't have nearly as much time to get that humongous round that Reynor got. With Vipers, you might be able to get 1 or 2, either or, you know? So it absolutely would have changed the trajectory of that game, but unfortunately, with Reynor playing that out flawlessly, he scouts it, it is almost game over for Oliveira. He doesn't scout it, there would probably still be a chance that Reynor recovers, especially because we know him as pretty much the comeback king. I would still feel very safe giving him that nickname.
Absolutely. Oliveira this time around going for the SCV scout to make sure that his Reaper is going to be able to move out on the map, whilst Reynor kind of guessing that Oliveira might be going for something like a proxy, very diligent with his Overlord scouting himself, gonna sneak out the drone past the Overlord so that he can later take this hatchery once he has the money for it.
Yep, not even going to try and contest that. Really wants to get the information. You know, if he doesn't see a hatchery already done, it's a bit frightening. But it is a normal build. We said that up until Oliveira decided to use his reactor the way that he did. So I do believe Oliveira, just as the Terran, but also the player working with that problematic ping, is going to be the one that really has to change up the builds and try and get some leads, either by being aggressive and cheeky, or by being maybe just like extra macro and then playing a little bit more of a defensive style, because we do see a 3cc from Oliveira, so definitely not cheeky. In fact, very much in line with regular TVZ nowadays, but I don't know how comfortable he'll feel being super extra aggressive with it. I don't know what server they're on, to be clear, but it is absolutely something to consider when so much of the TVZ is microing very well with your Marines.
Yeah. And our observer does a beautiful job to point out the importance of this Overlord, which sneaks on behind the base of Oliveira unspotted. The CC is there to be spotted if Reynor moves just a little bit north here. So if he moves to the right, rather, he will see it, and then there's potential for Reynor aggression. But the later this game goes on, the more likely that Oliveira just kind of gets away with the grid that you were mentioning.
Was the left gas geyser the second one? Can we get a check on how much gas is available? Yeah, it was the second one. Believe it or not, I would believe Reynor would be able to tell that that was a 3cc based off of that. It's super small detail, but considering that Reynor isn't too desperate to get any further scouting, I think he's already figured it out.
All right, that would be rather impressive indeed, and it's very likely, but he's not really moving the Overlord for the time being. I still think that he wants to confirm at least the follow-up, as Oliveira is going for a couple of Hellions, first a Viking and then a Liberator off of the starport, and now he will confirm the CC, and yeah, that's going to be rather nice for him.
Well, the thing is, he might be able to determine it's a 3cc by anything afterwards. What is the combination of structures after the 3cc? That would still be very much in question. I don't think the gas changes well, I guess if you're doing like something like quick battle cruiser, it might have changed. But anyways, yeah, you definitely want to see it. Viking out, but then the barracks was faking a move off. So he's faking getting into...
Swapping.
Yeah. Well, yeah, swapping, but I'm just wondering why, because he also faked Banshee Cloak on the starport, so that he wasn't faking transferring the starport. Okay, he's actually going to get a Banshee, but just not with Cloak. Okay.
Was the starport spotted? Can we look at Reynor's vision? Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's why I'm That's why I'm like,
Well, yeah, maybe when the barracks started floating, he was hoping that would be enough to tell his opponent it's probably something like Banshee with Cloak, and then retreat with the Overlord instead of, for sure losing it while you go further into the map. So Reynor just kind of wanting to confirm, goes on further, and yeah, the mind game doesn't work as well.
I gotta say, he scouts the 3cc eventually, like confirmed, just, if I'm wrong about the gas geyser. And then I know okay, I was like, why is his drone count so low? Oh, he is gonna all in. Okay, yes, 100%. He's been planning this, I think, from that refinery. He's gonna do, get a lair, but absolutely no upgrades. Bring the queens over to deal with any potential banshees, of which there's one uncloaked, by the way. So he's just gonna be like, oh, great. And then he's gonna try and win right here, right now.
Yeah, this is very interesting indeed. It's going to be a lot of links, a bunch of roaches, and he will be looking for the punish that we've been talking about for a while now. It's going to be 7 queens and 2 overlords. There's an extra overlord that's going to go to the main to try and disrupt with circlings. But pathing-wise, I guess the circlings are going to hit a little bit later. I would almost wish for this overlord to have left first and to hit with the circlings in the main to pull units back for this all-in to really take advantage of being as strong as it can be, as it's now hitting the third.
Yeah, that was a little unfortunate there for Reynor, whose Lings could have easily jumped on top of this tank faster. But at the end of the day, you can just see that Oliveira was completely unexpecting this. Like, he had no idea it was on the way. If he did, I think it was a very easy choice, very safe choice to just go back into his natural, which now he does. And he does have a solid fight in the natural because Stim is done. And that is the benefit of him not actually going into something crazier, I suppose. Liberator's not going to do a whole lot, but still a lot of Zerg on the front lines. And then maybe Reynor could... drop in the main base. Excellent addition.
Yeah, that's gonna do wonders for him. It's killing so much. Oliveira just not able to react to this one, as there is too much going on at the front. Reynor has already dropped creep tumors as well outside of Oliveira's base, so even if he wants to stabilize, he's gonna have to use scans in a game where he doesn't have the economy to work with. The Liberator run into a Spore on the other side, so nothing really going the way of Oliveira this game, and Reynor with an impressive all-in closes it out.
Yeah, very nicely done. I think that was a solid build choice, actually, kind of regardless of what the end result was. So, with that lift on the barracks, I do believe it was, and Scarlett's in chat saying the same thing, it was maybe trying to give that little bit of an idea that it could be mech. And since Oliveira is working with the, playing from China situation, I would say that mech is more likely when you are, afraid of lag and ping issues. So... yeah, I think this works if it was mech, because mech has so few units early on, and the queens take care of the banshees, if that's what you're depending on saving. That's theoretically, I feel like Oliveira would have had a better chance with the build he actually ended up choosing if he just saw this coming. If he just had an inkling of it, right? Then again, he backs into the natural. So there was certainly a risk with what Reynor was planning. He maybe didn't have literally all the details, but he did know it was a 3cc. And I think he was planning on punishing that greed almost no matter what.
Yeah, very impressive punish indeed. I mean, accounting for the Banshees, that is the unit that you make as a safety mechanism to account for Roachling all-ins. And, it's very uncommon to get the extra investment into Overlord speed, into the lair, and then make enough queens to actually cross the map. It hits a little bit later than most players would expect for an all-in that's trying to punish a third CC, but worked out beautifully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I think for Oliveira, it's actually a little bit gut-wrenching that didn't work out the way that he did. If he could take a quick second and kind of look at the replay and how that all went down, he might be saying like, oh man, like I actually think I should have been okay in the situation. I did bamboozle the guy, but it's still just a strong attack when your units are not clumped up together, when they have no defensive properties, when you scout it as late as Oliveira did. So already on his last life. In the bottom right is the Red Terran. He is Oliveira.
And in the top left, kind of dominating this series, it's not even close. It's for Basilisk, Reynor.
Also, I do think that Ling attack in the main was the real gut punch. Because if Oliveira had held in the natural, the supply depot, an SEV pool, and growing marine count, he would have lost a lot of SCVs with the SEV pool, but then he might have killed the army, right? And then you can do maybe some counterattacking. The fact was he lost 20 SCVs kind of for free, basically, in the main base, and was going to inevitably have to pull the SCVs in the natural if he were even to survive, which we know he did not. So that was just especially brutal.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like Oliveira got it completely, then he got a gut transplant, and then he got it again on multiple fronts, because I mean, even the creep tumors at the third, right, even if he stabilizes, even if he doesn't take any damage in the main from the Lings, even if he barely holds onto the natural, then he has to clear 2 different areas worth of creep tumors when you're already behind economically. So even just dislodging the third as convincingly as Reynor did, and killing all of those, and then gaining the terrain and making further use of that lair and the queens that he had, just to slow him down should he ever hold and then break out. I mean, yeah, there was multiple layers. He was just buried so many feet under Oliveira. There just absolutely no chance on so many fronts.
And Oliveira also, I mean, you can kind of say it's a bit unlucky. He didn't go over to the right side to harass that third base until the Liberator, right? And the Liberator kind of happened as he was being all in. Had the Hellions gone over there sooner, he might have been able to pick up on a lower than normal drone count. I'm not sure if Reynor did any faking with the transfer. And of course, if his Hellions had been more courageous, they could have entered into the natural and maybe seen a lack of gas, like illusion chambers, the roaches literally forming, any of those things. And again, his army was actually going to be better suited than if it was mech, which has such limited production. He actually had units. He just needed them to be in a better position and better SimCity working with them and all that good stuff.
Yeah, most definitely. And the Liberator, of course, just didn't accomplish anything because it's sieged on top of a spore, unfortunately for him. Hard to blame him because there's so much going on. And this is just kind of Reynor also, right? Like, because we saw it in the series against Showtime earlier today, he has just been multitasking out of his mind today. And so, I mean, it's so difficult to keep up, especially if you have a little bit of ping. But even without ping, it's been such a landslide that I just don't see them on the same class, at least not today.
No. None of these things I would blame on ping. I might blame Oliveira's choices, like in the first game, for instance, on feeling like he has to do something to make up for later annoyances with that issue. But that last game, I think it was a relatively simple fake. It was something that really did not cause the Terran to, they didn't have to force it. It was like, oh, I'm lifting my barracks. Just kidding. Right back onto it. Doesn't require a lot. And then, this third game also looking like it might be just a normal build too. 3 CC. No complications I can see from Oliveira's China to North America, whatever they're playing on, but he still is being outclassed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not like micro came into play very much in the last game, right? It was just all choices pretty much that did him in, and just how good Reynor was at executing and multitasking as well. But it's not like you had the units in place, you didn't have the bunkers, you didn't have the scouting information. Like you said, he got it very late, so yeah, it's a very tough one, and he has a mountain to climb, Oliveira, as he's going to open with Banshees once again, this time with Cloak. And Reynor going into a lair at this point in time.
Yep. Maybe we'll finally get something kind of decently going into the mid-game. It's a little more even on both sides. Because I do think that there are still ways to play out a Terran's mid-game, kind of after the basic 1-1-1 choices, that can still be a little different. And actually, I think Oliveira in the past has been particularly good at doing that. So it's not that he opens up something crazy like 3-star port Banshee, like Maru, but he'll get into kind of a typical 3 racks setup with medevacs, and then he'll just zig when everyone else zags. Been using that a lot lately. Or he'll include Hellbats with it, which can add that just a little bit more of a punch than Zerg's usually expecting, a lot of quicker armory. And I think that could still be something that's very clever, but still allow that room to grow afterwards. It's not as dedicated as, that first game with the Marauder Hellbat attack.
Most definitely. Most definitely. There are kind of like lower effort units that you can use here and there, as the Banshees are going to go on the other side of the map. Very micro intensive units, but they rely a lot on positioning as well. So as long as they can mostly avoid this more or less perfectly placed spore, they should be okay. And they do scoot towards the side where the spore is not, like it's 1 hex to the left. So he looks for an opening on the right, and now we'll be able to pick off 3 workers. This is the most success we've seen Oliveira find all series long.
Unfortunately, yes. And it's not too much, but we also don't necessarily expect that much from Banshees. So 3 drones and then they live is pretty good. Maybe the Hellions find a little bit more on the creep tumors, which we're catching some. We have a lot of barracks already coming down. So Oliveira, planting down more than 2 barracks at a time. He added 4, but then he added 3 more before the 5 barracks even have all of their add-ons. So this is just accelerating into an 8 racks, very dedicated attack, which Reynor would love to scout.
Yeah, I mean, I love this from Oliveira because he has had a strong early game. The Banshees are there to double down as potential offense later on, and they do find those 3 workers, but also they kept them safe in his greed, and this time around he goes unpunished with that 3cc opening. So pros for Reynor: incredible creep spread. Oliveira didn't really have much to deny it, and it's a pretty rampy map, so it's very difficult to say deny the first creep tumor or delay it. And then, I mean, Reynor is just one of the best players at spreading creep, quite honestly. So that is the difficulty for Oliveira going into this. But as far as the game goes, conceptually, he has made great choices, and the early game has gone swimmingly for Oliveira. So let's see if this timing attack can work.
Well, I think it's got a lot of power behind it.
Yeah.
8 racks is still very scary, even though it's maybe a little reduced in its commonality, how many people do play against it. A little bit of micro being shown off here against those banelings is always nice. I mean, Oliveira did throw out an ARAX against Reynor in their last best of 5, but it was a bit more awkward. There was a lot of kind of missed scouting and difficult choices Reynor had to make. He went to a Spire when he really didn't want to. This would typically be where a Zerg player would say they have a good chance of dealing with this, but they also want to make sure they know it's on the way, which I'm not sure Reynor knew about. I don't know how scouting goes, but we have an attack, and banelings, gonna be caught by the Banshee. Maybe not enough.
Yeah, good splits as well from Oliveira to reduce the damage that those Hellbats take. Even though they were clumped up and in a line, they don't all end up going down. And he gains a fantastic position here. The tanks are going to be super helpful, especially if he can get one behind those rocks. And Reynor getting caught a little bit here. I feel like this is a strong chance for Oliveira, as Reynor now looks for a little bit of a surround while the creep hasn't receded. And one of those creep tumors actually fails to get scouted. And that's wonderful news for Reynor, who is now going for the surround. The Baneling's not quite connecting, and the line of Marines extends very far back for Oliveira, so he will hold this position.
Yeah, it's very important that Reynor doesn't think that he has this one and then runs out of banelings. If there's literally just 10 Marines left over and you run out of banelings, you're in a lot of trouble as a Zerg. And people who are familiar with ARAX are certainly very familiar with that. So Reynor pulls back. He did have banelings morphing as well, so Oliveira wouldn't be able to get that jump. Overall, I'd say this is kind of an okay position for Reynor still, but we do have to talk about the maxed out moment for the ARAX. Maxed out, maybe 2-2 finishing, and if Reynor doesn't have a hive with Vipers for dealing with those tanks, it could still be very complicated. But considering Reynor got up to 86 drones on 5 bases and still dealt with the first attack, I'm pretty impressed.
For sure. And he kills both or all of the tanks, really, which are the anchor for this army. There's no other source of splash. There's no other super unit here that's going to help Oliveira a ton. As Reynor now going for one of his signature counterattacks, he's going to get inside the natural. There is a lot of banelings and links spilling in, so economical damage will be done. And this will force Oliveira on the offense once again, I believe. So wonderful job here from the Italian.
This is once again looking like a just different class of players, which, yeah, we all can admit that Oliveira's run in Katowice was just simply magical. But again, we've said it before, I gotta say it again, so many players respect his skill, even outside of Katowice Magic. Usually I would say this would be closer, but Reynor is handling this 8 racks player as if it's no big deal, as if he's still on 5 racks. See if Oliveira's last push might be able to do something.
Yeah, and that is also just kind of trademark Reynor. If he wins, you know, a lot of the time it looks so convincing because he is so fast, and if he's winning, that means his attacks are working, and then he's very quick to snowball. Oliveira finding himself in a decent position once again, but unfortunately for him, again, that one creep tumor that was barely missed by the scan makes it so that he is in the middle of creeps still. So the backstop potential rather for Reynor is there. Oliveira does gain a strong position where it segregates both of the armies and the bases of Reynor to either side. So Reynor has to kind of regroup. Oliveira with a wonderful spread, and finally will scan that annoying creep tumor, but won't be able to take it down even.
This isn't even a full surround, actually. Reynor missing the left side of his army, so it's a bit ill-timed, but it doesn't really matter. He just had too much with that creep to hold on, and it still ended up being a surround, even if he missed some of the queens on the left side, turning it into a 360 surround. Unfortunately, once again, Oliveira is running out of steam too fast. No miracle moment once again on Dragon Scales. At least I don't think so. I'm happy to be wrong. Oliveira is still trying to get every little thing he can with the limited units he has, but they're taking on queens, which I don't know is the greatest sign. That's not exactly amazing most of the time.
Yeah, it's an absolute slaughter. I mean, Oliveira is staying here because I think he thinks, okay, I took down this base, like maybe if I take another one, he's going to be down to like 2 or 3. But Reynor's already retaking the right side of the map, already ready to potentially forfeit this area. And Oliveira is going to get once again surrounded here. Let's do a quick zoom on that creep tumor, the magical creep tumor down south here. That creep tumor, I hate it so much. If it was taken down, the surround from Reynor not nearly as effective. Spreading back onto creep is the worst feeling for a Terran, as you well know.
Yes. Yeah, no, it really did impact some of the earlier fights. Even still, even if one creep tumor isn't usually a part of it, I am still a little flabbergasted. I'd love to go back and rewatch how this worked out. That Reynor, again, got up to 86 drones. He had 2 more and then built something on 5 bases and then dealt with an ARAX as if it was no big deal. Like, I don't... Yeah. I feel like, he didn't go up in a Hydras or Spire, and his upgrades finished well timed, but still, Reynor made Oliveira look like child's play.
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like the creep tumor gave the win to Reynor, but it certainly would have been a little bit less of a landslide at the very least. How much impact it would have had to not have creep behind your army, I'm not sure. I think Reynor probably still takes it because he looked so dominant, but when it rains, it pours was my point. I mean, nothing going the way of Oliveira. His biggest victory in this game was taking down 3 drones with the Banshees, so yeah.
Yeah, very, very tough series to watch for Oliveira fans. And Oliveira does not do particularly well in this tournament. We'll see what he can do, I guess, next week. For now, congratulations to Reynor for the 3-0. And we move on to finish the broadcast off with Kalaris in the Kalaris Dome.
Thank you very much. Yes, right. Reynor made that look like an absolute doddle. I cannot believe how quick we're back here in the Kalaris Dome. We've got Fear Dragon and Rotterdam to talk about this one. Roddy, Reynor smashed this out of the park.
Yeah, Reynor looked fantastic. Mechanically, he really looked on point. I felt that he was pretty much doing all the things right that we know that Reynor can do right when he's feeling it.
Yeah.
He was amazing. The engagements were sexy. The surrounds were well set up. It felt that the queens were always where they were supposed to be. This fight, I think, maybe could have gone a bit better, but it was obviously okay given how the game was going. Just it was all Reynor and very little Oliveira on this best of 5.
Yep, Fear Dragon, taking a look at that. Sorry, I was talking to production whilst all this was going on. It's all good, all good. Taking a look into this series as well. I mean, it started from the very word go, to be perfectly honest, with Reynor just looking really on point through the entire series.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, I think I just want to emphasize that it was game 1 and 3, his defense looked really great, but even in game 2 over here, his offense and his ability to just make this push happen, Oliveira just had no idea it was coming until it was way, way too late to do anything about it. He even had the defense of the Spore Crawler to defend against the Liberator that was happening, the Liberator harassment that was happening during this attack. Reynor was just covered on all fronts, and it really did look like, from start to finish, really, really strong play on offense and defense. Reynor was out for blood, and he got it. He got all of the blood.
Oh, yes, he did. Yes, he did, as we take a look at the tail end of this third game as well here. And Oliveira just really not getting much going in these highlights presented to you by Aramco as well here, Rotterdam. I'm sure as much as, you're happy for your boy probably, I would like to see Oliveira have a bit more gusto behind it, being our world champion,
Yeah, no, absolutely. He is the world champ. He's a well-deserved world champ, and he has gone 0-6 on the Saturday and Sunday here. 0-3 against Hero Marine, 0-3 against Reynor. The first day looked quite all right, actually, against Lambo. I mean, maybe that game on Gresvan, at one point, he got a bit sloppy and it got a bit close. But we're like, all right, Oliveira is here. He's here to play. He's ready to impress us once more. Last two best of fives, there's very little going his way. Yeah, I don't know what to say. That just makes me a bit sad because sure, I'm always happy for Reynor, but I want to see more of Gumio Dark, right? And even the TVT between Spirit and Special. I think both of those best of fives were excellent today. But yeah, just like with every other sport, Kalaris, sometimes you're going to have some more one-sided games. And obviously for Reynor, job well done. He qualifies for the big Gamers 8 tournament. He's going to be very happy. But I'm sure that he almost wished that he was pushed a little bit harder as well, because this is not how Reynor versus the world champion of StarCraft 2 is supposed to look.
Yeah, hopefully we get to have the interview with him in a few moments time, even, I should say here, and then be able to kind of hear his thoughts regarding this series as a whole. But let's take a look at the brackets now and confirm what has happened here through the EPT bracket, because now we do have 4 of our EPT players confirmed for Gamers 8. Up towards the top, Hero Marine and Cyril being able to make it look good for Fear Dragon. And of course, I think a lot of us look at Cyril thinking, yeah, of course he's going to be able to get through. But Hero Marine, once it everything I'm about to say just comes at the expense of Oliveira. He slaughtered Oliveira in a 3-0 to get to Gamers 8.
No, Hero Marine played so well on those TVTs. He absolutely earned that spot. And again, I think it's not an unexpected result to see Cyril qualify or to like win his side of a bracket or something. But the way that Cyril did it, he dropped that one map versus Showtime, and it looked like Showtime was playing really well. And then he just looked unbeatable in some of the other games versus Showtime and versus Special. He looked like the Cyril of old. He looked like angry Cyril, which is my favorite kind of Cyril. I love when Cyril gets angry.
Scary Darth Cyril. Yeah, he's a terrifying one. Maybe it was always funny back in 2018 when by the end of the year we were like, could someone please just beat him? Please? It was terrifying. But let's look at the lower bracket as well here and confirm the 2 players that have been able to move through. Spirit up at the top here and Reynor towards the bottom of this bracket. And Roddy, especially when we look back at that Spirit versus Special match, that truly was, no pun intended, a special one. It was a great series, and Spirit gets to Gamers 8.
Yep, that was awesome, man. I really loved it. Even that final game with the mech, and at one point I was like, maybe that final army of Special can get the job done, but it's just amazing to see how consistent Spirit has been over the last few months. He's really making a name for himself as not one of the top 10 guys in Europe, but no, I feel like he's slamming down that door into the top 5 and potentially wants to get a whole lot higher on that ranking. A well-deserved, hard-fought victory. Obviously heartbreaking for Special, because next week Kalaris is not going to get any easier when we've got Clem and Australia joining in the mix as well.
No, true. It really doesn't get much easier for either bracket as well. I mean, if you look in the Korean bracket as well, some big names going to be entering the fray there. So it's all but uncertain for some of these guys trying to advance through towards Gamers 8. So that's kind of the games as they do stand here, Fear Dragon. Fear Dragon, if you had to pick a moment from today, I mean, there was some really good series. What would you go with as we take a look at the South Korean bracket?
Ooh, I mean, I do have to say, like, the beginning of the day, the first series of the day was truly definitely my highlight. I think that was such an action-packed, barn burner of a series. I have to say, if you need to go back and watch one series, go watch Gumio versus Dark. It was fascinating to watch.
Calling something a barn burner. He's speaking my language. Let's look at the lower bracket here as well. And with Solar and Bjorn advancing from the upper and down towards the lower, we have Dark and Maru able to make their way through. A little bit of a, how do I describe it? Not the most exciting series between Maru and Hero that we were hoping for, Rotterdam, but Maru looks back on form, back in control, back to the greatness that he is.
Yeah, no, we can just erase whatever happened yesterday. And we're like, okay, that was a bit odd, but Mario looked amazing today. Like he has looked amazing so many times throughout, well, the last couple of years at this point. The man is just on point. I thought that the first game between them was kind of interesting. And at one point, I was kind of feeling it for Hero. I was like, okay, that's a good attack, a bunch of SCVs. But yeah, after that, it all went downhill. It was a bit of a one-sided affair. I don't think anybody can argue with Fear Dragon. That Dark versus Gumio was fantastic and was the highlight of the day.
But there's one other highlight here for you, Kevin, for all the Protoss players out there, is that since all the Protoss player made it out of stage 1, we get even more Protoss players next week in stage 2. They're all going to show up over there.
I'm sure that we'll have a couple of TVTs as well, and I'm sure that you guys will put me on it, because I feel like I've casted non-stop TVT over the last few days. Now, I don't mind it when the games are as good as Special versus Spirit, but I don't know what my co-commentators are on to, but somehow I'm getting scheduled for every single TVT, and, you know, they show up for a couple series Kalaras, then they dip out. Meanwhile, I'm here from the very beginning till the very end of the day. It's a brutal life over here.
No, actually, you've got a good point, Kevin, and I think, to that point, you guys should absolutely make sure Kevin covers those TVTs. When it comes down to them, I'm excited to hear more of that. Thank you very much, guys. All right, we have Reynor on the line after he's now qualified into Gamers 8. So without further ado, let's talk to good old Reynor. Let's see if he can hear me. Can you hear me, Reynor?
I can. What's up, lads?
Amazing. We're doing good over here, and apparently you're doing good as well. My first question to you, Reynor, is, well, firstly, congratulations for qualifying. That's awesome. Before this series occurred, what were your confidence levels like in ZVT in general? Because obviously you come off of a weird series before this, and then now you just smashed Oliveira, sort of. So where were you at before the series coming in?
I mean, a couple of days ago, I played against Special and it was really bad. I was not happy at all with how I played. I was like, okay, this is not acceptable. So I fired StarCraft. I played like 45 games in a day, basically.
Jeez.
I was like, okay, I need to get back on track. And yeah, I would say it worked. I think I played pretty good today. Like, even for my standards, I'd say I played quite good, actually. So yeah, I'm happy with obviously the level and the result.
Yeah, absolutely. A casual 3-0 smashing of the world champion. Good job, Reynor. Rotterdam, I'll pitch it to you. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, for sure, a couple. I mean, it was just a trio. I think the games against Showtime, our mine was on point as well. So first of all, congrats, Reynor. Let's start off with the second game, because you did the exact same build as you did against Gumio at the Intel Extreme Masters Katowice. Maybe fine-tuning a little bit. Cheeky link drop in the main base. I love that. That was good. Was it meant to work against Bio too, or is that an anti-battle max special?
Absolutely not. I thought it was, well, he faked that it was mech, obviously, because he lifted the racks, and I was like, okay, this is suspicious, because you don't lift the racks like when my Overlord comes usually. Like, you want to wait a little bit. So I was like, okay, this could be Bio, but I think this team is going to be pretty late then. So I'm going to go for it anyways. It was not meant to work against Bio, obviously. It was meant for mech, but it did work out in the end. I don't know. When I saw the Marines and Steam, I was like, But then, yeah, I kind of crashed him, so pretty happy about the build. Freestyled it on the moment.
No, it was beautiful execution, especially the links in the main base. I don't know if you caught track of it, but they went ham, man. They got every single SCV in there while the Big Five was happening in the natural. I would love to ask you one thing about the Showtime series as well. You guys had a pretty good game on Dragon Skills. I think it was game 1 Dragon Skills? That's right.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Did you think that you were going to be able to break him towards the end? Because I know you had a good attack, you had a couple successful run-bys, but he also had 1 or 2 very strongholds on his side of the map. And when you... no, wait, I'm thinking of 2 different...
No, yeah, you're thinking of Neo Humanity, the second game.
Yes, but also your first attack, he was on the top left side, right, on Dragon Skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you in the end decided to send it, he had the stasis trap, he had the Archons, he had the batteries, he had cannons. Were you convinced that you were going to be able to get the job done there?
Yeah. I'm very proud of my CVP at the moment. I feel like whenever I don't take damage and I get some damage done, not even much, but some damage done, I always kill the Protoss player, always. And when I killed the workers in the main with the 2 Bailings, I was like, okay, he's dead. So I just need this decent execution, and he's dead. There's nothing he can do about it. With the way I play, I'm very hit or miss in CVP, and I punish every mistake I can. So yeah, I didn't let him breathe, and I kind of knew he was dead. Obviously, it was maybe possible to hold, but it would have been perfect execution maybe then. yeah, it was going to be hard for him.
Damn.
Yeah, well, I think you had maybe not perfect, but I think very good, at least offense on the execution offense there, because that could have gone wrong, I think, if maybe the Ravages and the Roaches were a bit more clumped up. In that second game, quickly then on Neo Humanity, at first it looked like you were steamrolling, and then he actually had 1 or 2 very good holds, because he did land a couple of massive biles. Ever slightly concerned on Neo Humanity, or you felt that you were just too far ahead to ever let that game slip?
Yeah, I was a little bit concerned because Neo Humanity, I always played with the rich gas, and he blocked it. So I was like, okay, now this all of a sudden becomes a toss map, because Neo Humanity for me, it's a Zerg map only if you take the rich gas as third. And all of a sudden it became a toss map. I was like, okay, how can I handle this? And I made some Muras because I thought this build kind of sucked against Muras, and they got me ahead. But I was kind of scared, because I wasn't breaking him, and then all of a sudden I killed a lot of probes, and I was like, okay, if I keep pushing, then I'm pretty sure I'll break him in the end. So yeah, I was kind of scared at some point.
All right, that's all for me. I'll pass it over to Fear Dragon, but obviously very well played in both the ZVP and the ZVT. Congrats.
Yeah, congratulations. And I think I just had one kind of major question about moving into the series versus Oliveira. How much on your mind was the whole Katowice run and everything, and kind of getting revenge? I'm just curious.
I mean, a little bit. It's always nice to get revenge, but it's for me, it's qualifying to this. It's not getting revenge the priority. I think about qualifying. I don't really think about getting revenge. As I said many times, I'm happy for him. I think he did a great job that day, and he definitely had an insane run. And yeah, I just wanted to play him again and feel the level and everything. Obviously, it's nice to get revenge, but I wasn't like, if I don't get revenge, I wasn't like Maru level, you know.
Yeah, I suppose so. All right, well, thank you for joining us, Reynor. Any final words, shout-outs before we let you go?
Shout out to Basilisk, love you guys. Shout out to Red Bull, and shout out to all my fans. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Congratulations for qualifying to Gamers 8, and we'll see you there.
Thank you. See you there. Bye-bye.
Awesome stuff, Reynor. Qualifying on through here in the first bracket. The opportunity does not pass him up with the 3-0 against Oliveira. Gentlemen. What I'm going to call it a turbulent day, Rotterdam, because we've had some excellent series, but we've had some proper bops as well. It's been up and down today.
Yeah, but I think it was more enjoyable than yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
I think yesterday we had a lot of one-sided series, especially the best of fives didn't quite live up to the expectation. I think today was fun. I was thoroughly entertained as a StarCraft 2 fan, and I definitely enjoyed myself, either casting the games or just hanging out with the other casters. I think it was solid. I think the best day was still the first one. I think we got very spoiled on the opening day of these qualifiers, but I think next weekend, Kalaris, it's going to get even better.
Yeah, we've got some good stuff coming up. Last thoughts, Fear Dragon, before we finish things up for day number 3.
Oh man, yeah, I'm mostly just excited for next week, and there's going to be a lot of those Protoss players are going to start showing their heads with stage 2. So I think that's something to look out for and be very excited for.
Doesn't change anything for me, Kalaris. They're going to put me on the TVT, mate. I've got nothing to say. My colleagues are dominating me. TVT next weekend as well, but can't wait.
Can the Protoss make it through when only PvPs are left? We'll find out then, Rotterdam. All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me here. Thank you very much to everybody around the world as well. That has been 3 fantastic days of Gamers Without Borders to start things off. But don't worry, we reboot on Friday and we do it all again to find out 8 more players moving on to Gamers 8. Without further ado, that's it from us. We'll see you next week.